It's 5:30. Call this meeting to order. In Steve's absence, I will be presiding. So first agenda item will be the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. Would you please stand? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Next agenda item before we can have our esteemed guests. If I can get everyone to review the agenda and get pending that review, motion to approve.
So move.
Second. We have a first and a second. All in favor? Opposed, same sign. Okay, agenda approved. As discussed and as is our history, every year in the January meeting, we have the pleasure of being joined by Donna and Rob from Hoosier Energy, and they are with us remotely tonight. They just provided us with a wonderful dinner, so thank you for that. We certainly appreciate it. So without further ado, Donna, Rob, the show is yours.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate the flexibility to be able to participate in this fashion with you this evening, given the weather and the ongoing storm that even though it's through, we're still working through that from a power market standpoint. So some still long, busy days here, and we appreciate your flexibility around that. Brett, I believe you're going to advance the slides on your end.
Yes.
Those in the room, so that would be great. Before we dive into the material that we've put together with for you this evening, I just want to recognize one of the really important cooperative principles that we all share, and that's your economic participation in the GNT that you own along with 16 other distribution co-ops. And so around that, back in November, the board of directors at Hoosier approved returning patronage of $13.3 million back to all members. And that represents margins from the year 2000 and a part of 2017. I think our return to Decatur was just over $633,000. Brett will correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that's what we returned back to you for that period of time. And, you know, we really try to be good stewards of those funds while you have them invested in Hoosier. And in large part, that's what we're here to do this evening, is just to share with you what we've been working on your behalf for the past year, and to talk about whatever's on your mind and answer any questions that you may have. So if that sounds good, we'll dive right into it, and then we have plenty of time for whatever discussion you'd like to have. So on slide 2, I thought that we might talk about this year in the context of what are the key issues that are being discussed by utility boards of directors and CEOs across the country. And a lot of these will sound very familiar because of the same things we're talking about with our board. The Hoosier board actually had a governance retreat back in late summer, and we asked an outside industry expert to come and spend some time with the board. And I thought he did a really nice job of kind of laying out under an umbrella of 5 main areas that folks are focusing their attention on. So I thought I'd cover the material in that way. So in slide 3, let's talk about the first one. And this is one that we know very well as cooperatives, and it's always about balancing affordability and reliability, the tension there. And we know some of the challenges around this that we have been facing and continue to face are the impacts of inflation on every aspect of our business. All the materials, parts, pieces that we utilize have gone up significantly in cost, just as they have there at your own local cooperative. Also, when we look at fuel cost, which is a large part of our total power supply cost on that side of the business, for example, natural gas continues to be kind of the base fuel for power generation in the United States. And we have seen those prices over the past 5 years increase by about 70%. And that's not taking into consideration some of the really high spikes that we see during high demand times. That's just in general. Also, we continue to see the impacts of supply chain disruptions. We talked about this a few years ago, and it looked like we were kind of working our way through the disruptions that were caused by the pandemic. And then we have the war in Europe, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, that have kind of mixed things up. And because so much of the world is building out their energy infrastructure and transitioning to different types of resources, not just us in the United States, we have a lot of demand for the same types of equipment. And so we've seen some lead times for some parts in our business go from what used to be a year under for certain transformers, an example, to that lead time could be 4 to 5 years now. Obviously, that impacts the way that we manage our inventory levels and some of the steps that we have to take to ensure that we can still provide reliable electricity. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about just the change and the evolution of the power markets. That's a continuation of the conversation we've been having over the past few years. On the next slide, the second area I would couch as under grid resilience. We know that we're having more and more frequent, more extreme weather events that we have to deal with. Notwithstanding what's causing those, we just know that they're happening. And one of the things I always like to point to is in 2023, there was a tornado in southern Indiana that impacted a good part of our transmission system. And our crews would refer to that as, that was a one-time in my career type of event. Well, we had a similar event, different part of the transmission system, but a very similar event that happened in 2025. So it used to be once in my career are becoming more frequent. We also know that there are more and more cyber threats and attacks on the energy infrastructure that we need to be mindful of. And then also when we think about the infrastructure, it's aging. A good deal of the United States infrastructure was built decades ago, and it needs to be brought up to current standards. And we also need to continue to build that infrastructure out to serve new loads and load growth. And so that's just kind of a natural evolution of where we're at with the infrastructure. Add on top of that, that now we're utilizing that infrastructure in ways that wasn't originally constructed to be used, with two-way flow of power, and then also balancing out intermittent generation resources like wind and solar. And that's a lot. That's a lot for that infrastructure to handle. So that poses a lot of challenges for us. The third area that I think is super important is really with all of the changes that are taking place in the industry, is to make sure that we have solid stakeholder education and engagement to tell our story and keep member consumers informed on what's really happening in our business. Also, working with policymakers and regulators at the national, state, local levels so that they understand our business and can make really informed decisions when they're considering policies and so forth. And this is where I'd really like to give a shout out to our national organization, NRECA, as well as Indiana Electric Cooperatives, a statewide organization, for all of the work that they do representing the cooperative interests across the country and here in Indiana. When I think about NRECA as an example, there's over 900 or nearly 900 cooperatives across the nation. If each of us were to go in and try to tell our story on Capitol Hill, we wouldn't get very far. But with the way we've come together and NRECA tells our story, I think, in a great way, we make a lot of progress there. And I'll take my hat off to Jim Matheson, who a few years ago was sounding the alarm about how tight supply and demand was getting in the nation because of the retirements of generation and the replacement with what had been baseload, round-the-clock available generation with more intermittent resources. We were heading towards an issue and an affordability issue. And he was beating that drum when it wasn't popular, but that is the main story today, as we see on the national stage. So kudos to him. Also, I mentioned talking about what is going on in our business with the members and community. We know the demographics changing, and we always have to be mindful of how we can meet current day members and others in the community telling our story where they want us to, whether that's social media platforms, however that looks. So that's a challenge. The fourth area I would describe as being related to talent management and innovation. So as quickly as things are changing, not only making sure we have the talent that we need today to run and operate our business, but also looking ahead 3, 5, 10 years down the road, what types of talent are we going to need? How is that impacted? How is it different when we start utilizing more artificial intelligence in our business? And so I think that has a lot of opportunities. It also has some challenges around it for all of us. And obviously, we all try to do more with less. And so how can we work differently and work smarter? And as I said, get more from less. The final area that I would talk about is one that maybe isn't as prominent as it was just a couple of years ago, but one I don't think is going away, and that's really decarbonization commitments. So, we used to hear from a lot of new, large prospective loads across the member system service territories that they were interested in 24-hour carbon-free renewable generation. And we said, that's really not a reality. That's something that we really can't provide because there's not long-term storage that goes with that. Now those stories have changed, and they're all about how quickly can we get onto the grid, recognizing that today to run their operations, it's really going to be natural gas to build new resources to meet their needs. And they seem to be fine with that. They seem to just have set their carbon goals aside for their immediate needs. However, I don't think those are going away. As soon as we get more generation built, they're going to go back and they're going to want more lower carbon resources. So that's what to keep in mind as we make long-term decisions about our supply mix in the future. So switching from kind of those broad issues that we spend a good deal of time talking about and thinking about here at Hoosier, I want to talk a little bit about power supply and demand. And the slide on number 9 is one that I think we would probably just scratch our heads and we can move right through it, because going into the winter that we find ourselves in, NOAA said they were expecting, normal weather conditions. I don't know what normal is, but I think where we find ourselves is probably not normal. It's probably a little bit extreme. But I think the big story in this section, if we go to the next chart on slide 10, this is really NERC's assessment of how ready the North American power grid was as we headed into this winter. And I've shared similar updates with you in the past. I think I've shared that NERC comes out with this just ahead of the winter season, and they'll do it in front of the summer season as well. And so you can see that NERC was primarily anticipating that we were in pretty good shape under normal weather circumstances, but they did highlight some areas that under extreme prolonged weather conditions where there could be some risks of not having adequate supply at those very peak times. And so what I would just pause and share with you as we find ourselves in the middle of Winter Storm Fern is that we have seen some challenges to the bulk power system. And as I've mentioned in the past, reserve margins have gotten smaller and smaller. And what those are there for are to buffer extreme events, to make sure that if demand is much higher than was forecasted, or if generation goes offline, that there's enough excess capacity there to meet those needs. So the system is tighter than it used to be. I would say that so far, while things have been a little bit challenging and tight, that there have been adequate supply resources across the country, that there's not been any need to, have demand reduction or mandatory reductions in demand on the system. So, but we're not through all the winter circumstance yet. So it continues to be every day poses its own challenge until we get through this winter event. But that's what I would say is I would say this is an extreme circumstance that we find ourselves in. And so far the grid has held up, but it has been tight. So I think if we go on and maybe head to slide 12, and we talk about how I view our position as we head into the future from where we stand today. And I would just share with you that I believe that Hoosier Energy is well positioned over the next few years. And this is why I say that. On the next slide, I think one of the most important things that we've done is to diversify our resource mix. And this is something that we've talked about for the past few years. And if you look at where we were in 2019, as we were considering what we wanted our long-term resource portfolio to look like, you'll recall that we were very heavily concentrated in coal. And that was primarily from 2 units that sat at one plant site, our Merom station at the time. When we look at where we anticipate being in 2029, and I would just say that we'll in large part be there this year in 2026, once the Palisades facility comes online. But you can see that we've gone from concentration in 2 units that were coal to now we're introducing nuclear power into our mix for the first time with Palisades. And it is still on track to come online early this year. We've also increased our generation from natural gas resources. And this is one that I really want to mention because we talk about diversity and you may say, well, you've increased your concentration in natural gas. How is that diverse? I would tell you that within this natural gas category, we've been very mindful of making sure that we have a variety of resources. So within that category, we have our St. Joe Energy Center combined cycle facility that we purchased not quite a year ago jointly with Wabash Valley that sits in northern Indiana. And that's added to our Holland facility that we've jointly owned with Wabash for several years now, and our peaking facilities that set in Lawrence County and also Worthington. So we have a combination of combined cycle and peaking facilities that make up that gas component, 4 different plants, 4 different locations, and they're all served by 4 different natural gas pipelines. And so I think that shows that within that category, we've got a lot of diversification there. And we have increased also our utilization of renewables as those fit into our portfolio. So it's really this diversity, I think, that's going to lead to long-term stability for us. Why do I talk about resources? Well, in our bill to you, about 80% of our bill to you is directly related to our power supply resources. 14% would be for our transmission related cost. About 5% is for the substations that we own that deliver power to your system. And then the remaining 1% is for services that members have concentrated here at Hoosier Energy for the economies of scale that you see. So what's our capacity position? On the next slide, slide 14, this shows how we're positioned for the winter season for the next several years. And we have substantially put in place the capacity that we're going to need to serve members for the next 5 years. And we're also actively working on what we're going to need in 2031 and beyond. We've had quite a few conversations already in the boardroom around that, looking at different options as far as being able to buy power from others, build our own resources, a combination of all of that. So we're actively working for what we're going to need beyond that. And I think this is really important because I mentioned earlier that the current supply demand balance is really, really tight. And you can see that if a utility is needing to build something immediately or find something immediately, that's going to be a hard thing to do and it's going to be expensive. So I think having what we need pretty much locked up for the next few years will serve members really well. I also mentioned that this is a winter view, just as a reminder. We have to plan for every season, so summer, spring, fall as well. If I was to show you where we stand on those seasons, we're in better shape. So winter is right now where our member systems collectively peak and where our highest need is. So that's why I'm showing you that information. And so that's the supply, but where are we at from a cost standpoint? And the next slide I thought might be interesting perspective to share with you. So if we look at what's the cost of that power supply portfolio that we currently have that serves members. And so this year you'll see that the energy from that portfolio will average, we expect about $36 a megawatt hour. And if you compare that to a brand new efficient combined cycle plant today at a gas price of on average $2.50, you can see that that energy might be a little bit lower than this diverse mix that we have. But kind of the good news, bad news is if you look at the capacity price for that same new combined cycle, what it actually takes to have that capacity available, it's almost 4 times higher than our current portfolio. Also, you can see our energy comparison to a new combustion turbine peaking unit, were more cost effective. We also went out and looked for resources from third parties through an RFP, and our portfolio is less expensive than what we were being offered there. And then the one I find really interesting is the solar comparison. So I was on a panel just a few months ago, and an individual from the Hoosier Environmental Council was sharing that, well, we all know that the price of solar has come down dramatically. And I kind of shook my head and I said, the only thing I have to point to on that is we went out for requests for proposals, and solar providers, that came in as the most expensive resource right now that we could go for. And it's actually about 3 times higher than the price was for those same resources just a few years ago. So in 2020, when we were out there testing the market. So I'm not sure that the talking points that the individual had caught up to the realities, but this is what we're seeing. Also, the rest of the view on the capacity side, you can see that the price of our current portfolio is very competitive. All this to say is we're starting from a really good position when it comes to the cost of our power supply resources. But also it points to, as we see growth among member systems and we add new generating power supply resources to meet that need, those are going to cost more than what we're currently paying for today. So there's just kind of an outlook for the future there. And then the last slide I would share with you, because Brett would never let me get out of this meeting without sharing our outlook for our wholesale power cost over the next few years. And so this was taken from information that we shared with the Hoosier Energy Board back in November as part of our multi-year business plan. And you can see that while our average cost of power to members, and I recognize not everybody's average because each of your load profiles and memberships are different. And so I think the averages that I'm showing you here for all 17 members, and given your load composition, I think you tend to be on average a little bit less than this. But if you look at Hoosier's members collectively, our rate from 2024 to 2025 went down slightly. So we're down just over 2%. When we look from 25 to 26, where we think we're going to be, we're really looking that we believe we're going to be fairly stable with where we were last year. And then stable, slight increase the following year. And I think this is notable because we know that we hear the investor-owned utilities have recently announced double-digit increases in their rates. And they're really under the spotlight from the governor when it comes to affordability. And I think the governor and his office have been purposefully differentiating cooperatives, and that they say the investor owns. What we hear from them is, we like what cooperatives are doing. Why aren't utilities doing what cooperatives are doing? So I think we're starting from a strong position there. The other thing I would just point out on these projections, you'll notice that I mentioned in the subtitle there that they do not include any potential benefits from our New Era grant funding. So I had shared with you last year that Hoosier had been awarded about $677 million in grant awards under the New Era program, which was a program that was initiated under the Biden administration. And that award primarily is tied to our purchase power arrangement coming from the Palisades nuclear plant. And so we're super excited about that. But when the Trump administration stepped in, they put a pause on a lot of programs, including New Era, and said, wait a minute, we're not sure if we're going to go forward with that program or not. So there's some question about that. And the Trump administration did unpause New Era, so I'm pleased to say it's back in play. And I keep hoping any day I'll be able to say that we've signed the final grant agreements and that those awards will be available to us to draw down once we start actually buying power from Palisades, once it's up and running. So what does all that look like and mean for members? Well, it means that once Palisades is up and going, let's say we have a full year of operation for perspective, we're able to draw down those grant funds, it could reduce this outlook by about $6 a megawatt hour when the full benefits are in place. So it was a very meaningful program, very important. And again, I would give kudos to NRCA for explaining to the new administration just how meaningful the program that they set up specifically for cooperatives is for all of us. So we're super excited about that. With that, I've been talking a lot. So that's kind of our overall update on where we're at, what we've been working on. And now I'll just open it up for whatever discussion, questions that you would like to have.
Anyone?
Donna, this is Brett. So you kind of talked about, it was on slide 13, the diversified portfolio. I would have never dreamed it would have been that quick. And so I think one thing that people overlook is not only, what impact that has overall as far as our rates, but in cases where an outage, can you explain the benefits of having a diverse portfolio when you experience a unplanned outage?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that is one of the things, that we lived through for decades with the Merom station. So it was a great facility when it was great. It hummed right along. If it had a mechanical problem, which all of these generating stations are equipment, right? So they're gonna have issues at some point in time, even under the best of maintenance. We all know that in our daily lives, operating cars, equipment. We all understand that. But the concentration of having about 75% of the cost of your energy in one facility, if that facility went down, which they do, during a really high price time, that could cause a significant rate shock to members because we'd have to go out and replace that power at a much higher price. And so by diversifying, these issues are going to happen, but they're going to happen at small units at different times, and it makes it much more manageable and balanced for members. So it really provides a tremendous amount of stability going forward.
And then my other question was going to be, so regarding, this last cold spell that we had on Saturday and things got tight. Am I correct by saying, and I know you guys probably don't have any reports and things from MISO yet, but is it fair to say that doesn't necessarily, well, we know just from the information you shared, that's not because Hoosier Energy and all of us as members are short, or we don't have reserve margins there, and maybe even from the state of Indiana, but it's the fact that we do play in a bigger grid, and therefore margins overall of the grid have reduced, not necessarily Hoosier Energy or the state of Indiana. Am I correct by saying that?
Yes, you're absolutely correct. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. And so being part of a multi-state grid brings a lot of advantages. So, for example, if we did have an issue on a unit, there are other generating units across the footprint that are standing there, and reserves are there to pitch in, right? And I would just tell you that our units had good performance during this period of time in terms of being available to MISO. Now, how MISO chooses to use all of the different generating units across its footprint, they're the conductor, for that orchestra. But as far as the availability of our resources, yes, they were available. So, and you're right, as we plan, I shared with where we're at on our capacity side of things and to the long term, we never plan to be short. We always plan to make sure that we're bringing resources that match up with the amount of load that we also contribute to that footprint. We're doing our part. to make sure that we have the resources and the reserves. When you have multi-state, different state policies that play into that, not every state views things the same way. And unfortunately, we're all tied to the grid when it comes to that as well. But you're correct. You're correct in the way you characterize that.
So Donna, what happens when those issues are those warnings are issued like they were on Saturday? What do you all do? What is your reaction? What's your, what does that mean for you?
Yeah, so Saturday, as an example, was a long day. And so from the time that
I mean,
the first
I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I'm trying to get perspective around. There are things that you all are doing that in the blind users have no idea that are going on or how tight things really were. So I'm just trying to get, so because people ask those questions.
Yeah, so from the first time, I'll take a shot at it, and Rob can correct me where I misspeak here. So think about it, from the first notice that probably was just after midnight on Saturday morning, as far as things getting really tight with MISO. Our folks in system control, which is being 24/7, they get those alerts in real time. And as alerts progress to certain points that we've talked about beforehand, we have a plan that makes sure that we get all of our folks together. And we actually have what we refer to as a portal where we can communicate with member systems and talk about what is the current circumstance in the MISO footprint, and what is MISO asking us to do to make sure that we do our part to keep the grid safe and stable. And so we have recurring updates on that and discussions around that throughout the day as circumstances changed. And they continued to progress and get tighter and tighter throughout the morning, and then kind of relieved in the afternoon. We had another tight spot in the evening. So we have our folks in system control, and we have members folks that are out there on the operations side participating in those conversations. Again, also we understand what MISO is asking us all to do to make sure that the grid stays up and reliable, and that we manage it as best we can. That's what we're doing on the operations side. We're also working on the generation side outside of that particular portal to make sure that we're communicating with MISO on the availability of our units, any issues that we may be having, or the availability of those, how they're operating, keeping them up to date, real time with what's going on. That's all happening behind the scenes. Making sure that we're securing fuel when MISO says we need you to run, that we work with the gas folks and make sure that we have fuel, for example, to our gas units to run when MISO is going to need us. So there's a lot that happens behind the scenes. And I think that, go right ahead.
So in that event on Saturday, then you called on your LMRs then also?
Yes, we did. So that was part of, when you think of MISO, things can go from 0 to 100 in MISO, and they're seeing what's happening in the entire grid. So we understand that. But at one step, they thought, yes, we need to have folks call in your LMRs as part of, again, doing our part to make sure that things stay stable on the grid. So we did make those calls. And the LMRs performed really well for us. So those folks that said that they were going to be there to reduce load, they worked really well with us.
Don, I'll continue to tell you guys that I think the communication path through our key account and Justin, I'm kidding you, if I ask for something, I get it like way before I expect to. And I actually said something to Rob, and I'll say something in front of you, that we've put a lot in front of Rob's group, especially Tommy, with the amount of RFQs that we've seen come through in the last 12 months. And I ain't kidding you, we get answers back before the respective party even realizes. A lot of times we've already answered that. So I appreciate it. And I know I said something to Rob at the last board meeting, but those guys are kicking butt, and I appreciate it.
We appreciate the kind words. Always say, if you say something nice about people, I'm going to go tell them.
Anybody? Any other questions?
Is this your AI version of Rob? Is he really there?
I'm here, Jason. I'm here. It's been a long few days, Jason.
You're just in shell shock from your weekend yet?
It's not stopped. The weekend has turned into Wednesday afternoon, so I'm not sure when it actually, we call this a done deal.
All right.
So Rob, minus the, pull the weather out of the equation, because maybe it'll be 75 and sunny tomorrow. What's your biggest challenge coming up this year? I know the slides were very positive, especially if that ERA grant has an announcement and confirmed, but what would be your biggest challenge coming up this year? Weather
Yeah.
aside.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to go straight to portfolio, and I'm looking at, our portfolio team's working out into the 2030s right now. So we have to start making decisions now in preparation for that 2031 timeline. And one thing that I bring up, and I say maybe more than I should, there's not a lot of dirt being turned on new power plants being built. So we have to start making decisions on how we're going to fill that open position, whether that's purchase power agreements or make the determination that we want to build our own plant. So we're setting up a lot of conversations with neighboring utilities, with developers, with manufacturers of turbine generator sets. We have a lot of things in the MISO queue that's providing us a lot of flexibility, but we're working towards getting to a decision point. So 26, once we get to mid-year and the second half of the year, there's going to be decision points in the boardroom on power supply opportunities out there in 30, 31 and beyond. And a lot of those are going to be anywhere from 2 and 5 year deals to new build deals that would be a 30-year commitment. So there's a lot of work happening behind the scenes on that right now. We also have a work plan that's, roughly $400 million. So by the time we get our engineering support, our crews, our contractors going, we have a very large amount of work going on across the territory, from both aging infrastructure projects to new build projects that help us reduce transmission costs, which are the most quickly rising costs that we have. So we have a lot of work going on, feet on the ground in the field, as well as portfolio management out into the future.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any Palisades updates?
Oh, I thought you were going to say any new.
Yeah.
Dorian.
Yeah. I said on the group that meets with Palisades at least monthly, it's usually more often than that. Things are going pretty well. Put some information together that we'll be sharing here very soon. Palisades is still online to start the first half of the year. A lot of work going on. We hope that we start seeing systems being started. That process is going to be lengthy. How that'll work is they will start a system. They will check it out. It'll pass all of its requirements. They'll turn that system off. They'll restart it and then start the next system and do it again. There's probably in the neighborhood of 30 systems that'll have to go through that process. So that's 30 independent starts to get to the last system. So that's going to take some time to get fully online. Once it's fully online, they will then do some testing that we will turn into MISO to prove the availability and capacity of that unit. And at that point in time, we can move towards commercial operation.
So we're still on target for maybe May, June-ish kind of timeframe?
Yeah, as we sit here today, the schedule indicates that May 31 into the middle of June kind of timeframe. Everything's still pointing that direction, Jason.
And Don, I'm still disappointed you didn't bring the big plastic check.
I know.
We'll that for 27.
I know. Days gone by.
Yeah. Don or Rob, I don't know who this is for, but I think it was on slide 14 where you talked about your capacity for the next maybe 8 or 10 years. The state of Indiana obviously is very attractive for data centers. And obviously the southern half and southeastern, southwestern Indiana are all attractive. While I'm not an electrician, I understand that the impact a data center or multiple data centers could have on the information you presented earlier this evening. Can you elaborate a little bit on the impact of if a single data center would make your numbers be any different than what you've shown us, or if 2 or 3 would make it, or 5 would make it any different, and just kind of the impact that a single or multiple data centers can have on what you've just shown us?
Yeah, always a everybody always wants to know about data centers. So appreciate the question. So I think one of the things when we think about a single or multiple data centers is it's really hard to give an exact number because they're all different sizes. And some maybe, 2,000 megawatts, some maybe 500. So obviously you could see that would pose a difference. But let me share with you the way that we've approached it with member systems. A lot of the conversations today that you hear out in the general public and those who are opposed to data centers, they talk about they're going to raise my electric rates, and then there's water and other issues that they bring up, but they're going to raise my electric rates. Well, I would say that it's been about 3 years ago now that we saw the potential for these very large mega loads, something new in terms of the size that would impact Hoosier and the members, could be a possibility. And so we worked with members to talk about what should our growth strategy be. And that is, we want to be able to say yes to serving these new different types of loads, but we want to do so in a way that makes sure that we don't shift risk and cost onto the other member consumers that exist today. So we want to make sure that any new large loads pay their fair share of cost and bear the risk that they bring to the system. So that's been our philosophy. And so we actually came up with a policy on how members in Hoosier would serve these large loads that addresses just that. And so when we think about it, these really large loads, whether they're located on Hoosier system or elsewhere in the MISO footprint, any of these really large loads are going to require more generation to be built to serve them, to make sure that they don't place undue burden on the electric grid. And so that is part of the feature of the policy, is to say, hey, we have to make sure you bring new resources or supportive of new resources, or limit your load until those new resources can come on, so that doesn't pose a risk for reliability for today's member consumers. So that's one of the ways that we address that. And so they're going to pay their share of the cost. And if it requires studies, they're paying that up front. If it requires new transmission infrastructure, they'll pay for that up front. So they're paying their share of cost. The other side that doesn't often get discussed, though, is, look, if they are going to use a portion of the transmission system that's already out there to move power from the larger grid and the resources to get to them, they can pay part of the share of the cost that members are paying for today. So there's somebody else to share in that cost. And that can provide some benefits to today's member consumers when it comes to their cost of transmission that's part of their bill. And for example, if that were to be on Hoosier's transmission system, that would reduce what today's members pay. Same would be true if it was located on a Duke transmission system or elsewhere. It would reduce Duke's cost on that side. So for us, it really depends on where it's located as far as the potential benefit that there could be for sharing of cost. But at a minimum, we've made sure that we've structured it so that it won't impose new cost or new risks on existing members. And it might provide a benefit depending on where it's located on the transmission system. Does that help?
Yeah, that very much helps. Yeah, I think the limited risk or the no additional risk to members is the issue. I don't think that ever comes up in the public conversations that I've had, is that everybody views that if a data center comes in, they're going to be at risk. But from what you just described, that's not going to be the case at all.
Certainly not the way that Hoosier members have come together and would structure the way we would serve that load. Yeah, we've been very mindful. And I think you'll hear more states now are focused on that, and more cooperatives are focused on that. I think, we were just fortunate that we had a potential for one of these, like I said, about 3 years ago. It didn't come to fruition, but it really made us think about how would we serve that and what are the new risks. And we're talking about a load that could double the size of our system, and how would we deal with that? So I feel really good about the structure that we've collectively put in place with members.
Good. Questions, anyone else?
Palisades, I know they were talking about putting SMRs on that property. How much of a reality is that, and how soon would that come online? How much of a benefit would that be to us?
Yeah, so Holtec is definitely moving forward with placing its SMR design. So they have their own design at Palisades. And their design is, they do these in a 2-pack, they'll call it. And so it'd be roughly about 640 megawatts total to 320 megawatt units. And they have plans to manufacture those first 2 SMRs at a facility that they currently operate in Camden, New Jersey, where they actually manufacture their nuclear fuel storage casks. That's a big part of their business, and they prepare those, manufacture those for a lot of other folks. So they have the plans in place to manufacture those. They've gotten some DOE funding to help assist with that, and a little bit. They still need more funding for that to get them up and going, but they're projecting that they will have those operating in 2031. And so they are making progress on that. And right now, there's some other SMR developers, but they're the first ones that are really talking about a commercial size deployment at an operating nuclear facility, which has some benefits to it in terms of speeding that up, and not just at a pilot scale. So I'm really pretty encouraged about that. I think they'll do it. I think the big thing right now with SMRs, as with any new technology, is the first 1 or 2 are very expensive. And then as you get them up and going and get scale, that cost drops off pretty significantly. So they're working hard to get a queue in place. But I'm hopeful that they'll actually get going. Technologically, they can do it and it'll operate. Now it's just a matter of lining things up to bring the cost down to make them commercially viable. So we're super excited. We're hopeful that we'll have Kelly Trice join us at our annual meeting to give an update on where they're at with their SMRs as well as what's going on at Palisades. So hopefully we'll get to hear firsthand from Kelly in April on the SMRs.
Anyone else? Questions? Don and Rob, I think we're good here. Want to say thank you on 2 or 3 fronts. First of all, thank you for the heavy hors d'oeuvres or the meal you provided tonight. It was really, really good. Secondly, thank you for the check that's in the mail. We'll be looking for that real big envelope. It's probably going to cost you some extra postage, but we'll be looking for that. And then third, and on a real global level, just want to say thank you to Hoosier for being a very important and good partner for Decatur County REMC. We appreciate having you as a partner. We appreciate the stewardship traits that you exhibit. We try to exhibit for our members and think it's a really good match. So hopefully it's reciprocal in nature and everything you see from us echoes what I just said. So thank you for everything. We appreciate your time this evening. Appreciate your information.
Well, we appreciate you as well, and appreciate the confidence and trust that you have in us. And again, in Donna's humble opinion, there's nothing better than the cooperative business model, and this is just a great example of it. So thanks to you as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a good evening. Safe travels.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
See you.
Bye.
Any additional comments on that topic? If not, we'll jump into next item, safety minute and cool minute.
Yeah, so from a safety moment, as you guys all know, with cold weather, I think I got out today. I didn't put my car in the garage and it said -14. As soon as I got the car going, I think it was -7, but I have a kid who is driving now and he didn't understand, well, why do I need to make sure I have gloves and a coat? And he has a habit of jumping in the truck with a t-shirt on. So as you guys are all aware, cold temperatures are going to be here for a few days yet. Make sure you take that into consideration when you're driving. As far as a cool moment, I got 2. So one, we had a member email us and then actually followed up with a phone call this morning. It is a hometown member. She had called in and talked to one of our MSRs up front about her tank being low and knowing the cold weather was coming in. We, with our partners, were able to fill her tank up Saturday morning. And she was very, very thankful that we were able to move so quickly. So that partnership still worked very, very well. And again, we delivered something to that member that meant a lot. So I thought that was clear. Second thing is we had a NRECA bill, and we transferred a lot of stuff to bank transfers, and this is the reason why. They had come back and said, "Hey, you haven't paid your bill yet," and Jenny kind of called it and said, "Well, yeah, we sent a check." Literally the next day, the bank calls us and they have a check that was looked out of the norm, and so they weren't clearing it. It was the check that we had wrote to NRECA. Someone had covered up NRECA and put their own name on it, and their bank cashed it, and it was clearing through our bank, but our bank caught
Their bank cashed it.
it.
Well, I think it was it was, they took it because it looked, I mean, unless you were looking at it, they did a pretty good job with their
Yeah.
perjury. You know, they deleted our name, wrote their name, signed the back. Big enough that they're gonna probably have some problems.
Wow.
So, but the bank called us and nope, that wasn't us. So the bank has now made a police report. I expect to hear from Greensburg Police Department. I imagine they'll be over to talk to us before long. I'd imagine once the snow and everything calms down, they'll be, and then it'll get moved to New Jersey where this person is from. And
Yeah, so it was interesting that our internal checks and balances flagged this, and then also our bank was able to flag it. So we were able to actually jump on it. So those are my cool moments.
questions, comments, anyone? Okay, and next agenda item for your information. There's several open action items closed. American Express, check register, ACH, safety reports. A minute to look over, see if you got any questions regarding any of those.
This is minor, but reliability 2.0, I'm assuming the deadline is 26.
Yes.
25. It
Correct.
says 25. Typo. Yeah, it's 26.
Oh, sorry. Let me back up. You're talking about the closed action item or the open action item.
Yeah.
So that is, Dale had asked, I think the whole board had asked, not just Dale, but it's a big enough spend and it's over a 4-year period of time. We committed to some improvements in reliability and cost. We would like a dashboard, actually, Brian, too. We would like a dashboard to be able to understand how that project's going if we get it back. So
Yeah.
I will bring that next month. We're actually working on it now.
I remember the conversation.
Okay.
This says it's due in 2025.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's due next month.
Questions, anyone? Observations, anyone? Hearing none. Move on. Approval of previous meeting minutes. December meeting minutes.
Make a motion to approve.
Have a motion, looking for a second. Second. A second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Operational strategic oversight, Brett.
All right, so I'm gonna go through some metrics first, and then I'll hit up some project updates. So if we go back to December and look at the median temperature, it actually was a very cold month. In fact, about 1.9% below our 5-year average. So you'll see that show up in not only financials, but some other metrics. Our purchased energy was up about 3.6%. Again, residential usually drives that because of the cold weather. Demand was up about 6.9% over our 5-year average. And then if you look at KWH retail sales to budget, so this is to budget, you can see where that shows up for December. So residential ended up about 16.6 above budget. Commercial was down, industrials were down. So really residential drove most of the KWH from December standpoint. Then if you look at the KWH sold by, so this is kind of the end of year, where did we end up to budget? You can see we were about 2.72 above budget, with the majority of that being in residential. Again, that's because we had a pretty hot summer spell and pretty cold winter. And then if you look at KWH sold by class, this is always kind of an interesting one to look at, especially at end of year, how actually close our projections are. We're a little off on residential, a little off on IPT, but in general, we were pretty close. And those matter from a budgeting standpoint because of revenues, right? Now, if I switch gears over to really taking a total look at this year's SAIDI, or not, yeah, SAIDI scores. So these are the daily SAIDI scores. So it's a pretty quiet December. In general, there's actually 2 points out of what we would consider a major storm. I will tell you that is a little out of the last couple of years have been very, very quiet. I think we've gone 3 years now with maybe 1 point over. We did have 2 this year. So if you remember in June, I believe that was, we had high winds that hit the system. And then again in April, we had a similar event where we lost some major lines. This does show, in our construction work plan, one of the projects is to start trying to reduce the affected outage. So instead of you can see this outage here in June, we had 3,900 folks off, which contributed to a ton of consumer hours. If we could cut that even in half by one of these projects, it'll make a huge difference in our reliability numbers. But all in all, nothing I don't think that's out of the ordinary from a daily SAIDI standpoint. Lost consumer hours from December, you can see was down. It was a pretty quiet December, really. And number of outages were down again below our 5-year average. If you look at our 30, 60, 90 days, it doesn't really show up in the 60, 90 days. 30 days, you can kind of see December was a little wumpy. And really the reason that is we were in moratorium. And so that sometimes if you get a big group that basically are covered by moratorium, it's going to hit your short term, which eventually will hit 60, 90 days. But once you're out of moratorium, it'll catch itself up. And then from a safety standpoint, I just kind of wanted to show we hit our goals as far as crew audits. So Jeff was able to get, actually we ended up, I think, adding 2 to what the numbers you're actually seeing here. And then near miss, what we're really looking for from a near miss standpoint, it always feels awkward to say we want to see more near misses. Every near miss or safety suggestion is a potential opportunity to learn. And so my expectation is year over year, we're seeing that number climb up. I think we've built a culture based on, don't be afraid to bring something up. We're not going to reprimand you, for something that you bring forward, even if it is a violation. So that has paid off, and we're seeing from last year, we actually had an increase in the DOCs, which is basically documentation of a near miss safety suggestion or incidents. And then if you look at the CA, which are corrective actions, pretty much in line with what we had last year. So I think everything is looking good from a safety standpoint or a prevention standpoint.
With the most recent storm, did we have any outages? I kept looking.
Very, very few. Onesies and
I kept looking and
twosies,
I didn't see
onesies and twosies, but nothing major. Keep moving on.
any comments or questions on any of that. Financial oversight,
I'm
man.
gonna go over, sorry. Here. So as you guys just heard, Donna talked about RG&T, Hoosier Energy, Jason's been a part of this, has done a good job over the last 3 years, really putting in policies in place that isolate existing members from from the cost of serving a large load, mega load data center, whatever you want to call it. So she kind of touched on that. I'm glad you actually asked the question. Because there has been a lot of work done to isolate and make sure that those folks are paying those costs. So now it's kind of our turn, right? So we do have some documents that we need to review. I'm just bringing this up because next month I'm going to hopefully bring a few things like disconnect policy. What's that look like if you get a data center? Things like capital credit. What does capital credit look like? If a large load was to get on. So bylaws, reviewing our bylaws. I think when we talk about maybe there's a couple that I'll bring up that we need to start looking at some of these documents. Jason and I actually talked on the way on Hoosier that we need to start putting these on and really looking at it from a lens of whether you get a data center or not. We need to be prepared, just as Hoosier took them, 3 years to get through some of those documents. So I'll be bringing those the next couple of months. New Era grant. She talked about the New Era grant. We have all that information over to Eric Blake from our cost of service study standpoint. He's going to be putting those numbers in and getting us some information so that we can make some decisions on how and what we want to do with that. I'm going to skip here to the building heat and air. We have had traditionally a problem. This building was sort of, put together in sections and the heating and air handling is terrible. It's either really, really hot or really, really cold. And you have to, for instance, this room right now is getting pretty warm, right? I'll have to go out and change the thermostat out there. And it just, we've got a lot of people with space heaters. It is very uncomfortable up front for the MSRs. Crystal can turn it up, but then her office becomes 100 degrees and it's still 75 out there. So we have had some local folks come in and take a look at it. We've done some dampening and things, and none of it's really taken care of it. And so I had Matt reach out to Piney Engineering. They do a lot of the YMCA stuff. They're really specialized in commercial buildings. They have the equipment. They come in, they can hook up and tell you the air flows and all those different things. So they came in, they took a look at it. They did estimate it. They believe they can get it fixed with the instruments and redirecting some of them, dampening some of them to where it's a little bit more consistent from room to room. The cost, we have a budget for building maintenance and things like that, but I thought the cost was big enough that I wanted to at least get a head nod from you guys. So it's 15 grand was the cost for that. And again, that would include them coming in and making sure that everything is done to get it to where we do not have this problem, because it has been a lingering problem, at least in the 8 years I have been here. So I just wanted to mention that and make sure, again, depending on how building maintenance goes, it could be within budget. But about the time I say, let's go spend this, we're within budget, and then something else major goes on and now we're out of budget, right? So I more or less just wanted to make sure you guys were aware of it. And if you had any questions or anybody that's completely.
The 15 is the diagnosis as well as the rent.
Everything.
Update on the front door.
So the front door is in March is when they're planning on being here. So we actually have a couple doors around here that are on that same list to do. We couldn't get on any schedule any earlier. March right now is what they're saying. They'll be at the beginning of March. And I don't know if that Suzanne was due to ordering the materials. I know we've been on the list for, since the first time I brought it up to you guys. We literally ordered it the next day. But there are 1, 2, including the front door, there are 3 doors that have problems. In fact, if you leave and don't slam the door, there's a good chance it doesn't lock, which is the last thing we want to do is leave the door open around here. So we are in dire need of those, but it sounds like March is the time frame.
What parking lot? Just slow coating and making the lines so you can see where the lines are.
Yeah, we didn't put that in this year's budget because we're trying to get one more year out of it. You'll see that next year's budget.
While we're talking about that, I was reading about the pole or the staging area back here. So the materials are going to come in February. So is the pole yard going to be big enough for all those supplies if they start coming in? Because now with this weather, what's gonna happen.
Our-
if that's
our-
not.
Plan B is depending on how much we get and what it is. And Sam, actually, we brought this up in leadership meeting this morning. Sam's plan B is if all else fails, we're just going to leave it out there for the time being until we get it here. We'll have to truck it back here once we're done. But there are certain components that he's saying definitely we have room for already back here for the time being. We'll just have to move some stuff around. It'll be a little inconvenient for now, but we did do that pull yard out here, the training thing.
Yeah.
So we do have some space there. So the idea is probably the big spools and stuff are gonna have to go out there if we can't get it done. And then some of the small stuff can be,
When you have that forklift in time for that.
he can give an update on it.
There was one that came up on auction Thursday and it brought too much money. Talking to the guys, they seem to think that a telehandler would be a much more useful piece of equipment than just another forklift. So that's kind of what we've been looking at. We went and talked to the gentleman here on the edge of town to see if they could help us with that, since they do that pretty much with their business, and most people seem to think they do a pretty good job from what I've gathered, so. We're gonna follow back up and see what else there is out there. I mean, like I said, the one brought more money than we were willing to spend, so
So you're shipping containers to store some of that stuff too?
that's the same question, but I.
Yeah, it's the same shipping containers. They're just gonna move them from out there. Danny.
Okay. I thought we were getting new ones.
No, we're
I got
renting
you.
ones.
Could we move those now? Since, is there room for those here?
Probably not.
Okay.
No, there's not a whole lot of room out here. We are gonna move some stuff around, but like I said, plan B is most likely stuff's gonna get shipped out there, and we're gonna keep continuing to use that until we can get this.
But
done.
the thing that was, you're not gonna delay the shipment of materials. You're getting the materials.
We are not gonna delay the shipment of materials. Absolutely not, because we've been in the queue. You guys made the call to do that early. We're not gonna have the yard be a holdup. Absolutely.
And everything, I mean, we've met with people about the fence and
It's all ready.
it's ready. We just need to know
Well,
to be gone.
yeah, the weather, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I mean-
questions.
Yeah, the weather has not been cooperative this week, nor will it be cooperative next.
But if you do go back out there and look, we've got it all cleared off as far as it's
Yeah.
mowed down.
The trees are all cut back, the stuff's mowed, it's ready as soon as
Yeah.
we get it.
So
Yeah.
our biggest roadblock is still the environmental assessment.
Yeah, I'm gonna go over that.
Okay.
Yep. So from you ready?
Yep.
From a fiber standpoint, so the metrics you guys have, those are of 123, so they have changed a little bit. He's got it now to where you'll see, so we're gonna report, just like we do our regular financials, you're gonna see the month end numbers and you'll see it on the last day of the month, essentially. But you see the numbers there. From a BEAD standpoint, the federal approvals have happened for preliminary awards. They're just working through the contract red line. So they have been given approval, the IBO. They're just working on the actual contract. The contract's changing a little bit from IBO or from the next level. And so they're working through the red lines on that. The environmental is a risk. I wouldn't say it's the largest risk because there's still a lot of stuff that we can do in the meantime. It's not holding up all the make ready stuff that they're doing. As far as when I say make ready, I mean, they're going out, taking a look at the poles, shooting it to make sure that it's got the clearances and stuff like that. It is a risk. Unfortunately, with environmentals, I asked this question today in our meeting. It's the going back and forth. So the government asks for some information, you give them the information and they sit on it. And by the way, we're not the only ones submitting this information. There's a lot of people with the BEAD program that's submitting the same information. So it's just that whole going back and forth. It doesn't have to do with us not having the manning and all that. It's literally just, it takes time to get through standpoint. I don't know, did I answer your question, Ron?
Yeah, sounds like it's mostly just typical government stuff.
It's red tape. I'll be quite honest, we don't have a lot of areas that most of the time we're able to say, look, we're just hanging this stuff on existing facilities. So what if there's a wetland or whatever you're going over? Plus, we don't have any navigatable waters, which I think the only one that's really holding us up is we've got some lines next to some cemeteries, believe it or not. And so we're having to redesign just to get around them so that we don't have to do the environment. That's how we're getting around a lot of that. And then the website has been updated. I don't know if you guys have looked at it lately or not. We did update with all the beat addresses now. So everything is updated. You're going to see there's a different color scheme on there. The one color scheme that I can't remember it is, but basically it'll say potential future expansion. Those are areas that we've identified that we have lined pretty close, and depending on the interest in that area, I kind of got your guys' appetite for expansion. Last board meeting, I think what I heard was, yeah, start building the plan together. Yeah, there you go.
So it's
It's pink.
Whatever, yeah.
So we're still working on that policy. We actually met with SCI last week. They really were impressed the way that our first phase went. And they've given us some ideas on some future expansion ideas and stuff. So anyway, that's kind of where we're at on that. Our biggest issue right now is, as you can imagine with the weather, is our fiber drops. And so it's really hard to knife in when the ground is frozen. So we're actually hoping maybe the snow actually insulates the ground and doesn't keep it from freezing. So as soon as the snow is gone, we'll be able to get in. We do have a backlog of about 58 right now. So we're about 3 to 4 weeks out. So when it comes to marketing, you're not going to see a whole lot of marketing in the next couple of weeks. Plus, we've held back on phone calls, primarily because we don't want to get members in a situation where, hey, we're going to sign you up, and then it's, a month later before we get out there. And so we got 58 in the queue that we do have a crew coming next week. They are, and you guys saw, I put a memo out there, but there are some mitigations. Some of it is you can run it aerial instead of below ground. Some of it is you can throw it on the ground and then come back later, as long as they don't have dogs and things like that. So there is some mitigations in place, but it is slowing us down majorly. You can't knife this stuff in. And so we're kind of dependent on the weather right now. So you will see less and less from a marketing standpoint. Again, we've kind of stopped phone calls at this point. If someone calls in and says, hey, we want hooked up, we're being very, very transparent with, here's what the time frame is. Lit Fiber, who's our contractor, put the drops in, has a schedule, and they're only scheduling so many in. And so of those 58, they've got scheduled dates there. Anyone we're adding to it, we're making sure that those are dates, that we communicate so that folks understand that because of weather conditions, there's only so many that we can do. So I would say we are at the limit of our backlog, being 58 at this point. So hopefully the weather will break and we'll get caught up. Lit Fiber has told us they can send as many crews here to get caught up. So I don't have a problem thinking that in a week or two, once this kind of breaks a little bit, we'll get caught up pretty quickly.
So do they just go from, we already have drops on the poles, they just go from that, they'll put it in the ground and into the people's houses? SCI data has to come in separately from them then too? Okay.
Yeah, so the way the install goes is we go out, we get a call from a member. They want to sign up. We schedule a 4-hour time frame. SCI goes out and does what we call staking, right? So they're going to meet with the member, talk to the member about the best route to get into their house and where in their house. We always said we were going to follow the electricity, but in all honesty, that's not always the best case. So we work with the member, they stake it out, put flags and everything out. And then the second SCI group will come in after the drop gets installed, and they'll actually do the in-home install and all that. So that's kind of how the normal process works. It actually works really, really slick. I'm glad we made the call to have SCI help us do it. And then, with the staking piece of it, it costs us a little extra, but it's really paid off. We've heard more good things about the installs than anything at this point. Any questions on fiber? That's kind of where everything's at. I gave you guys all the details in the memo. All right, meter replacement program. So the 3S meters, that's the last set of meters. There's 135 of those. Those were shipped on January 26th. So they shouldn't take about a couple weeks. Once they get here, it's about a 2-week for our guys to put those in. There are 14 accounts that we've sent letters to. Those are either they were delayed because of a refusal because we couldn't get on the site, or a member didn't want it, or a member had issues on their side that they had to get fixed. We did issue those letters, I believe, a week or two ago. So there's 14 of those that we still got to get through. Other than that, everything is ready to go. You can see here the overall network performance remains very, very strong. Currently, there's only been 4 meters that appear on the missing red report. If you compare that to our old PLC network, our meter guys come in every day and they would run a list of meters that did not report or something didn't jive right. It would usually be a page or two long, and our guys would have to go out and check all those. What she's saying is, since we've been running these reports, literally 4 have come up. And so that is a huge improvement so far. So that's the meter project. The other thing I wanted to talk about, I forgot when I'm talking about fiber, is I gave you guys all a 1-page sheet. And so these are talking points. Jason asked about this. He's getting questions as far as from members asking, hey, why would I pick up your guys' service? And so we tried to put together some things. Now I want to go over this as a team real quick of how we are marketing this and where we differentiate ourselves. The first thing is this local service thing. So Starlink doesn't have customer service, right? It's all online. It's a chat bot, it's emails. Here with us, you are going to talk to a live person and you can walk in the office. So that is something that is very unique with our service. In fact, we actually had a lady call in this morning and one of our first kind of outages. And she was very thankful that she was able to pick up the phone, call us, we could talk through it, we could get people out there quickly. And so I think that is the number one selling thing here is there's not very many providers that you can actually call and pick up and talk to a live person. Second thing is there is no equipment to purchase. Everything is included with our service and there are no contracts or hidden fees. A lot of other providers, they may quote you or they may give you here's a month per bill and then you get your bill and it has all these fees that you aren't really aware of. That's not how ours is. It is what the prices say on our books or on our pamphlets, and there are no contracts. You can literally sign up and cancel it if need be. Why PowerStream Fiber is better. So one other thing is that our lowest package is faster. With it being 500 over 500, it is faster than most other competitors can provide. So I was going to 2 gig by 2 gig all the way down to our lowest package being 500. Those are very, very, very fast when you compare it to any competitors. The other thing you would note is that fiber has so the way that fiber technology is, it's the only technology that has the very low, I think it's like 10 milliseconds latency. And so what they mean by latency is it's the time it takes the information to go to a server and then back. Where that becomes a big deal is where you're doing video calls, gaming, and all these other things that take that real live, no latency feed. So nothing else provides that with fiber. Everything else has higher latencies. So bottom line on this, you're going to get a faster, more reliable internet. The local service is huge, right? Dollars stay here long term. There's fair and transparent pricing. A new network. We're building the network for our community and for the future. And then we PowerStream Fiber offers service, performance, and trust. On the backside, I'm not going to go through each of these, but it gives you kind of the difference between local fiber company and maybe a large telco or PowerStream Fiber compared to Starlink. There's just a lot of advantages to the technology that fiber provides, plus being more future-proof and things like congestion. You don't have congestion. You always hear of folks that, hey, my XYZ service worked real well until they started really adopting people on it, and then it slowed way, way down. So anyway, this is just a page for you. I wanted to go over these points so that you kind of understand how we're going to be marketing this once we get into the heavy. So
You email that to us.
absolutely. Actually, I'll email it and then I'll throw it on your dashboard. Thank you. Yep. And these are the points that we're going over. In fact, it's kind of interesting to listen to the calls because it literally, the calls went from someone would say, we're calling each of these as they become open. And as I listen to the folks that are making the calls, it really went from if someone said, hey, I've got another provider, I'm kind of stuck in this contract, or I'm not really willing to switch at this time. Now, if you hear them, they'll usually talk through pricing and packaging, just so that that person is aware of what they get with fiber, what the pricing looks like, the speeds, and how much that differentiates our services. So it's been really neat to hear how our MSRs have really learned this and been able to talk to members and get that information through. Because that's my worst worry is that someone just doesn't want to change because they really don't know what they're going to get, with the fiber compared to what they may have. And so those are really coming true. The other thing that is out there is the satellite has dropped their prices. Starlink has dropped their prices. I question with what they dropped, is that even sustainable? But they have done that. I still believe our service and our technology is beats that.
You just have to buy the equipment.
Right now,
got free equipment now.
Oh, for equipment.
right now. So they know there's competitors out there.
But their rates are still higher than ours.
Right now, they're offering it a little lower. So
But it's lower on speed.
it's lower in speed.
Yeah.
And the dollars are leaving the community. That's-
And the dollars are leaving the community. And one other thing that we've really talked about this morning is how do we market the fact that this is a good thing? It strengthens our fiber network. It strengthens our electric network. The dollars stay here locally long-term, right? We do have contractors in right now. We get that, but long-term, the dollars stay here. How do we sell that to members that are kind of on the, hey, I don't really want to switch, but, so we're working on that messaging too, that it strengthens your co-op. It's your fiber network. It's your electric network. The more people we subscribe, the stronger that network's going to be. So that's what we're kind of working on messaging along with the service and the technology.
And we were going to talk about first of the year, you're going by my house, but I'm not necessarily on the list on the map, especially that Smith's Crossing area we were referring to. Where are we going to go with that?
So I'm hoping to bring you guys back an expansion policy, that line extension policy that I kind of first talked to you about last month. The reason we've kind of put that on hold right now is because we really want to focus on getting the design done for the BEAD stuff first. We don't want to slow that down at all. I truly don't want people to think that if they're in that purple shaded area right now, they're going to get anything any quicker than anyone else, which is the end of year to have this project done. Because I do think we could get into a bind where we're prioritizing someone that's not a BEAD grant over that. That doesn't mean we're not going to bring you a policy and start working on it. I just don't want to market that's going to be.
It's still on the table though.
It's absolutely on the table. I think there's going to be pockets that completely make sense. I just don't want to put it out there that, that there's some time frame behind it, because right now, everything from a timing standpoint looks really,
So
really
my
good.
answer could be it's still in discussion.
Still in discussion. It's not off the table.
We are under a time constraint with the BEAD,
We are, but it's 4 years.
4 years.
So we'll be fine from it.
Yeah, I'm just saying, there is a timeline with the BEAD stuff, so that it makes sense to prioritize it.
That stuff has to come first because.
The other reason I didn't bring you a policy update or a discussion that we had last month and keep that going is because we wanted to meet with SCI to get some ideas. So we met with them last Friday and got some.
I get that, I understand that, but if we have members that have them going in their front yard, it's a valid question,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
especially if they're interested in doing it.
Yep.
As soon as possible.
Yep.
Thank you.
Brett, as you and I were talking before the meeting too, if you remember when we decided to venture into fiber, our goal was not to be the exclusive fiber provider for everybody. It was to make sure that this community had high-speed internet. So, yeah, affordable, high-speed internet. So if by virtue of us getting into that market, we drive Starlink's cost down, we've accomplished what we intended to do. We want as many as we can get at the
I
appropriate
don't have a
price.
crystal ball, but if you drop your cost from $160, $120, anywhere in between there down to $50 and think that you're going to be able to provide that same, I don't think that's the same. I think you're just trying to pick up members in a contract.
If they were charging $300 just for the equipment, and now you're saying that
Yeah.
some they're giving away to some people for free. I know, I looked at Starlink, that It depends on where you're at, if you get
It
it
does.
for free or not.
It
You
does.
don't know, give it to everybody for free.
No.
So you could, somebody, yeah,
Yeah, that's not across the board,
No, it's just.
no, that's just,
depending on where you're at. But what they're doing is areas that are going to be competitive or they know folks got beat, they're going to sharpen their pencil and get them on. And then once you get them hooked, it's competitive landscape. It's different than our electric. So,
Competition's good.
yeah.
Exactly what it's
So
all
in
about.
these beat areas, are there other companies that are putting fiber in that you know of?
No, I mean, there may be a small set of them, but no one in their right mind. I say this and then watch something different happen, but the only way these business cases work is with the grants. So I would have a hard time believing that other competitors are going to go in these areas, like from a fiber standpoint.
Right.
It doesn't, I mean, most folks that we worked with that have been in this space needed a 3 to 5 year payback. That doesn't work. The math doesn't. So I would have a hard time believing that anybody in the beat area that we won is going to get picked up by another fiber. There may be some small ones just because they had to go to a different
Pass
location.
through or-
Yeah. So speed is key for those types of things.
But with the grants, things become a lot more feasible.
And we are still working with the group that, so our partner SCI Communications is the name of that company. They have a relationship with the folks with the guy that's running the Strategic Management LLC, who got some of the other grants. And so we do have we are going to be having some conversations with them to see what their plans are. Because they picked up pretty much all the other areas that we did. Yeah, so continue conversations there. SCI Communications. Anything else on this?
Anybody? Financials, Matthew?
So I'll start it off since there's a bunch more stuff that's new. Does anybody have any questions on any of this right off the bat? Because I thought that might be the fairest way to start. So if you do have any questions, I can hit on those.
I guess the first thing is we kind of need to know, is the look that we gave you guys, the 3 different looks. So you're going to see it as an electric, like you've been seeing it right all together. Then you're going to see it broke out as fiber only and electric only. I couldn't think of any other way of really showing it because I think you need to look at all these separate. And I think you need to look at them together. I think you'd be blind going in running the business, not seeing all 3 aspects. This is how we plan on showing it month over month, if this is what you guys are okay with, if that makes sense. That's the first
It
one.
makes absolute sense to me.
Okay.
I can separate it out.
Do you like how it looked? I guess that's the question.
well, but I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't say the numbers, we said the report.
Yeah.
But it does give you though, I think if you look at, the combined and then you're able to separate out, it answers a lot of questions about some of the, why things are high in one area and not in the other.
So,
It told the story for me.
so for reporting purposes, moving forward, like annual reports or 990s, those kinds of things,
Combined.
it'll always be combined. So we're
Yes.
gonna have the asterisk.
Yes.
Asterisk.
Now, this separation is we are going to be running capital credits as separate, right? So you're going to show the negative for, whatever it is until you get the cash flow positive on the fiber side for capital credits that way. That's how we kind of always originally thought about it is you separate the 2, run the capital credits separate. That way you're not subsidizing one or the other as far as capital credits. In other words, your fiber business won't be paying capital credits for a long time. In fact,
But you're not also gonna reduce your liability of the capital credits that go.
absolutely.
We are.
Say that again.
So are you gonna maintain the electric capital credits? So they're still gonna be on the regular schedule and show those margins.
Yes.
So this is not going to eat into that when you
No,
combine them.
no,
Because you're
because they're
gonna,
independent.
you're gonna,
The capital credits will be independent as.
You're not netting.
We're not netting them because that wouldn't be fair to the
Yeah.
electric side, right?
So I'm just trying to think how, like, you know, like now when we look at our capital credit deal,
It'll look the same other than it'll have
Yeah,
a
another
fiber wall on the side.
Yeah, you'll just, we'll have, we will now
we won't
have,
have to.
We don't have to worry about that.
we'll have G&T capital credits, we'll have our.
Yeah, I guess it would be
That's
no
gonna be
different.
no
than
different.
the last-
Three
Yeah,
sets
yeah,
of
yeah,
credits.
yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
expand that schedule.
okay. But
And that's-
you're gonna have, but like when you do your reporting. See those, that's not gonna, you know what I'm saying? That's not gonna match up.
It's an asterisk. That's the only way to do it. I think they want to see it as a total.
So it'll be combined, so it's gonna reduce your margin. For, and what form, what would that show up on? Would that show up on?
Form sevens.
Form 790.
But the one thing that I think we're gonna have, don't be naive to that, this is me. You're gonna have some of the general public that are gonna see that reduced consolidated number and they're gonna go, electric's paying for fiber. Because it's $100 here and a loss of 50 here, netting to 950. But everything's gonna be tracked independently, but perceptually, it's gonna make it look like electric is subsidizing.
But the answer to your question today, as far as these being split out, yeah, you can follow along and I can see why that, but I don't, me personally, I don't feel a lot of need to dwell on the fiber independently at this point. There's really,
Well, I mean, it's
know,
brand new. It's not.
right,
it's
I
not-
mean, it's.
Those will
reference.
materialize over the years. Right
Yeah.
now, I mean, when we did our budget, we did our best job.
We just need the framework.
It's an information piece, the way I look at it right now.
I mean, think about the electric side. We hit our budget within less than 1% every year because we have
Yeah.
80 years of experience on it. We have a lot of past
It's
trends,
Yeah.
whereas we have none of that with this. So, it's only going to get better and more. I want to say this, you'll drive more decisions based upon it as they mature.
I guess the reason I'm just trying to think in my head how all these are gonna morph together to an end of the year tax reporting or an annual report from it, like how we're gonna put all that together and spit it out and, cause everybody's gonna wanna compare. And then you're in this.
Annual report is probably something we need to have a discussion on because I don't know that in the annual report you'd even want to show it as a combined. You may want to show it separate, or you may just want to show the electric until we get, some mature financials on the fiber side.
I think
that's up for discussion.
consolidated no matter what. That's my opinion.
Say that again,
I
Matt.
think you show the consolidated no matter what, because that's,
Well, again, my concern becomes that from the general public standpoint, if you show nothing but consolidated, they're gonna say, well, our earnings went down by whatever fiber lost, and therefore my capital credits are gonna be reduced.
so their capital credits were not reduced because they're being tracked separate.
But
That's the asset.
if you only present consolidated, that's what I'm saying, it's
No.
perception. And I understand what you're
There's
saying.
a certain group of people who we could
I-
hit the lottery tomorrow as the RMC. and
I
they
agree.
would be unhappy. So
I agree. But, and I don't want to worry about placating to them, but I do want to make sure that the general person out there understands the data we're presenting. So, and if you present it only consolidated without some sort of supplemental information, I think you're asking for a lot of questions.
In actuality, though, I think what the general public needs to know, or our general members need to know is we're running these as three set, we're running three. Well, you're making decisions based on three sets of financials, and I think that's the best way to do it because you get to see the three different lenses.
The filter.
well, I mean, they also include, there's the propane joint venture as well.
Yeah,
as the-
it's in there
I mean,
too.
there's more than just,
Propane's in there or Viasat's all in there.
That you're talking.
Yeah, pennies.
I'd say huge number, but it's not zero.
No, but in the big scheme of things,
How much Viasat do we still have left?
I think they're still just shy of 100 if I remember right. Now we're transferring those as fiber becomes available.
yeah, I'm no longer.
I've got Viasat.
You can have it.
What's letting on this weekend?
Crystal told me this.
I never told you that. Grandkids out all day.
That's funny.
Yeah.
But from a practical standpoint, Jason, I understand your comment, and I agree with your comment about, I'm still gonna concentrate on the electric side. Fiber is it's gonna have to morph into its own.
He's right. It's gonna evolve, but the framework, I think, is probably the important thing to get right. Rather than the content.
Yeah, I mean, it's the next year yet, it's still building.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean,
And the
the propane business didn't look great the very first year either.
Either the electric.
No, it did not.
Yeah.
That was for the electric.
But the ability to filter out electric, fiber, or joint, I think is gonna become very, very important down the road.
And we have very discreet,
important.
time, like, so when folks are spending time in the fiber business, we have it
Distinct, not
Pretty-
discrete. It's distinct.
not discreet, what's the word? Very finite groups. So we know what, if you're spending time on fiber, like, we know where it's at.
Do you have any additional reporting requirements as far as these grants go in the
Yeah,
future?
Uh,
Just during the bill?
just during
Hey,
the,
we served these addresses that we agreed to, here's what we spent. And then there's no future.
There's, you have to, I believe there are some things, but I don't think it's. I believe you have to maintain ownership of it. Some stuff.
there are requirements, but I don't, once you get past the grant. fee.
You couldn't build it with their grant dollars and then turn around and sell it.
Correct.
That's correct, yes.
You'd have to operate it for a certain
You'd
number
have
of
to.
years, so you're gonna have to file some kind of report saying, yep, here's our numbers, here's what we're doing, we're still operating it, that kind of thing.
Minus phone. Now, phone you do, there's some
Yeah,
compliance.
there'll be a lot of.
All right, anything on the balance sheet? Up?
All right, so I'll start off here with the balance sheet. First is net utility plant. It crossed over between our usual things, our 5% or $250,000 difference. So the reason you see that large increase is the fiber being moved from other deferred debits, which is the 183.33, where we tracked it up until this year. As of December, the fiber is now, it's no longer, since it's a functioning business, it's not a startup anymore. So that's going to be tracked through separate accounts than where it started. And that's how you get these financials split up and all that from a system standpoint.
So with the bead stuff, it automatically
Bead is-
going in this, or you keeping it separate to?
The bead is going to be tracked. It'll be in what we call 107.1, which is the WIP account. So, and you'll see that more later when you look at the plant. So that is letter A on my thing. I think Brent emailed you these as well, right? So you've all seen them then. So
Yeah, it's not in the call.
Yeah. So that's, you can see letter A changed. The total other plant and equipment, that's mainly the Hoosiers are allocated our earnings for their year. And then next is the letter C, which is current and accrued assets and current accrued liabilities. That is where we talk about how there's a due from PowerStream and the back and forth, the intercompany, so to speak. You can net that to zero because you will, from an auditing standpoint, that'll get netted to zero in a consolidation. But for the purposes of this, I wanted to show that so that you could see that, hey, we are tracking all this separately. They are being treated separately. So we know exactly where things are. Then letter D would be the long-term debt. We did borrow $2 million in December. Any questions on the balance sheet or on any of the balance sheets that you got from any of the other that are broken up? Okay, next I'll go to the operating statement. So first off, revenues, that is higher for the year. As Brett said, in December, things picked back up a whole bunch. We wound up, our AWH sales were 9 million above our budget, or 2.72%. So about 3% over budget for everything. So that was that when you're 3% over, you have a higher revenue. Same thing, it corresponds with that as the power cost was higher too, because you got higher power costs, higher revenues. Those go together. Also, we do have in the operating revenue, we did have the pole contact fine. That was a significant amount of money that showed up throughout the course of the entire year.
Is that still ongoing, Matt? Or is that done?
That was a one-time fine for illegal contacts. Now the getting the make ready for that is still ongoing. So next we'd have controllable expenses. You can see from on my note there, we're realistically within $20,000 on the electrical side. It does include in the consolidated, the fiber expenses from September, since the business went from a startup to operating, even though we really had almost no customers the first part of the year as you're still doing drops, but the first customer you turn on, from that point forward, from the accounting rules, you need to start treating it as if it's a functioning business, not just a startup anymore. So that's where that you have more expense showed up there, but that's what that would be. Then F, which is the non-operating income, that you have Hoosier Energy's capital credits were about $200,000 more than what we budgeted. So they had a better year than expected. So that shows up there. Any questions on the income statement on this or any of the others? And if anybody has any questions afterwards, you're welcome to email me or call me as well. Lastly, cash flow. In general, cash stayed relatively the same. I mean, there's not a whole lot to say there. I mean, money came in, money went out. It's same as normal. I mean, nothing really stuck out. It's really oddball there. I mean, we had a lot of AP for the month, but we got a lot to pay this month. So
It's Matt's favorite statement.
well, I mean, it serves a purpose, but it's only to tell you so much. I mean, in general, we manage cash every day. And this is a one snapshot in time number. I mean, when logged into the bank today, it's $3.5 million there. I mean, but I pay Hoosier tomorrow or Friday, so that month would be.
Talk about timing.
Yeah, the timing thing. So cash throughout the course of a month varies immensely. Then we have plant. So here I showed where we were from everything standpoint. You notice the pole replacements went down from November to December, and that mainly involves what we build, one of the third-party attachers. We build them for a lot of as I said in previous months, that they were getting a lot of work done. We build them for a lot of that work. So, and we have been paid for a lot of it as well. So that's positive. And then down at the bottom, I kind of showed the special projects. So the RF meter project was being tracked through a separate account, not necessarily showing up in the same spot as everything else. So I showed what it cost there. And the next one, the fiber whip, that is the money we're expecting to get reimbursed grant wise once we turn all that in here. We sent them a bunch of stuff in November. They finally approved that. We should get paid for it here within the next 30 to 45 days from what the state told us. My intention is the first week of next month is to put in a very large request for grant reimbursement, and we'll take most of that. I hope to get reimbursed a large amount within 30 days there and expect to. So then the other stuff, the main line and drops and the other, that's the stuff that we capitalized, because that's kind of pretty close to what I'm expecting the final. If you can see there from the screen, that's what I'm expecting to capitalize out of NLC4. So the WIP number, I expect us to receive back in grant reimbursement.
And then when you get that, then what are you gonna pay?
The grant reimbursement, I'd say by the time we get that back, we'll be buying fiber for B. If I was a betting man. Yeah.
So we really won't pay that stuff back until we get the B build done and then submit for those reimbursements. And then that'll be the last, and then we'll start getting ready to pay some stuff.
On the line of credit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Debt service. You're not gonna have the ability to pay debt service until down the road.
Yeah, what we've tried to do is like if I have tried to match what I based off the best estimate, we're not going to be to the dollar, but we're relatively close. As we borrow money longer term, my goal is to not borrow more money long term. And so I have RUS money that I'm keeping to the electrical side, and then I have the other pot of money effectively for fiber, and I am segregating those from this is what this is for, this is what that's for. So the fiber money, anything that I'm trying not to borrow anything beyond long term, that is not gonna, only long term money I'm trying to borrow is the stuff that the grants are not going to cover, is what I'm saying. So for instance, if we have a $10 million project and 5 million of it is not covered by grants, I'm trying not to borrow any more than 5 million long term. So that way the time frame of what we have asset wise matches the debt. So, and as we receive the grant money, that WIP number will drop, because how you're required to do that is you reduce the assets by the amount of grants you receive. It's the same as if I build a line extension a half mile to hook up something, we reduce the amount of money that we capitalize in plant. So.
You mean the ADA construction?
The ADA construction reduces what we capitalize as an REMC.
We can't capitalize the total cost.
Correct.
Yeah,
What
if it costs
participated.
$10,000 to do something and we get 5, it's the same thing if somebody smashes into a pole with a wreck, we bill them for it. That just offsets. Which is, I would say it's fairly safe to say that the amount of what our net utility plan is on our books, it is worth considerably more than what that number is for those reasons, as well as the fact that inflation over time has greatly increased the value of what's out there. Any other questions?
Questions on the financials, anybody?
And now rolling right into BEAD, I need a board resolution to meet the requirement of an irrevocable letter of credit. That gives BEAD assurances that we will build what we said we're going to build, and that we have the financial capacity to build what we say we're going to build. So it is a requirement for their grant money, and does anybody have any questions on that?
Any questions?
On that?
There's a nice agreement in there. You can read all that.
Yeah, it's a long.
And that's a 4-year commitment.
It's 6, but the moment we get done, we won't need it necessarily anymore. So if the goal of being completed by the end of 26 is met, I would say we will be close to whether we need it or not in 27, depending on how far it gets.
And then are the provisions in here then for you have to own and maintain? That's
Not in this.
Not in this. No.
No.
That'll be in the grant agreement,
Yeah.
Okay.
which we haven't gotten.
Once you're completely built, they will not make you maintain this.
The reason they're doing 6 though is because you have 4 years to build BEAD. They know they're going to have some extensions that are on that. So they're going to want you to cover any extensions that could possibly be out there. That's why they're getting this.
Yeah. They're looking to protect themselves, which if they're going to give you that kind of money, I understand.
And it's a requirement you have to get the grant, you have to have it.
So hypothetically, if people were awarded BEAD dollars in our territory and you're already smirking, and they're not going, we won't know whether they're really going to be able to fulfill that or where we could build those areas for 5 or 6 years.
Potentially, yes.
So someone could go through all this process and still drag it out another 6 years and not build before anybody else could go in.
Somebody could actually take the money. There's a lot of money in middle mile. Somebody could take the money, default on the money. There's not necessarily complete clawbacks. Never has been. It's been an issue that we've raised many times.
They could build the middle mile, turn in all the invoices for that, get reimbursed, and then default on it last. Still keep their middle mile.
Hopefully no one would ever do that.
Yes.
But I mean, it's pretty lengthy period of time before anybody would even really know.
Correct.
Yeah. One of the unfortunate things about how that is working.
Yep.
But we can't worry about what other people are gonna,
Right.
may or may not do and why they may have done it. We can only do the right thing with what we have.
It's the same thing that I've been telling everybody. Is this board made a great decision by saying we have to have a business case to be able to do this. It says it's financially sound, long-term investment. And every decision we make going forward, whether it's expansion or whatever else, needs to follow that criteria because that's what builds the foundation of not subsidizing and making sure that this business can stand on its own 2 legs. And I think that was one of the best decisions we could have made is to make sure. So I think that I'm just saying this because whether you extend into somebody else's territory, even though it has B, it's still got to meet those same, in my opinion, it still has to meet those criteria that this board set forth to do, which is to be a financially sound business, as long as you hit the business case. Of course, there's always risks that you don't hit the business case. There isn't any business.
And these grants is the way a lot of that works.
Yep.
I mean, instead of only, well, there are areas you could build that without grant money, but they are few and far between.
Those areas aren't anywhere around here.
Well, there are a lot of those areas around here. They just have already been built to.
Yeah, it's very.
Now you're.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very. Yeah. So what you need action from this board to authorize you to.
I need you to pass the board resolution, which is the
Second B.
that says we can get the bead money.
Mr. Secretary's signature.
Any questions regarding letter of credit?
I'm hoping we only need it for 2 years, but
I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second. Steve second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
That was in favor of, right, Steve?
That's correct.
Okay, unanimous.
We're having latency issues because we're on power stream fiber.
that's right.
Wondered if you even had him turned on.
I forgot about you up there, Steve.
Hadn't heard his Costco.
Okay, so you got what you need there.
Yes.
Next agenda item, government document approval. As the board of directors, obviously, we're visionaries, we're not operational, so we've got a responsibility every year to provide the guidance through the bylaws that by reviewing the bylaws and making sure they're consistent, giving management the direction they need. We don't really need any action, but there are, as you may or may not be aware, there are some inconsistencies in our bylaws that we need to begin to review and probably modify some bylaws to tighten up those inconsistencies or remove those inconsistencies. So we just ask that you begin to review it. And if you're aware of any of those inconsistencies in the very near future, be prepared to discuss those, bring those attention to this board. Steve, you want to elaborate on anything?
Well, I mentioned that we actually, I believe, reviewed it the last time about a year and a half ago. We try to make it a yearly thing to do, but as far as elaborating on anything, just do your due diligence. Spend some time going over the bylaws, and as you see some things that may be considering to be changed, then certainly bring it to the board, hopefully at the next meeting. This will be a process, I think, over not just one meeting, but once you see something, do bring it to the board.
I have a few too so we also go through these with you guys. There are a couple that we wanted you to start thinking about, and we'll provide red lines next month. One is, so we have 75 days today. If someone wants to petition to be a director, we have 75 days. We're obviously not going to change it in front of this election, right? So, but for 2026, we'd like to change that to 90 days ahead. That gives us plenty of time to get on ballots, to get into I don't think it's fair for someone to want to petition. They petition at the last minute and we can't get them on in the magazine, right? And so what we would suggest there is if you read it today, it says any 50 or more members may make other nominations in writing over signatures not less than 75 days prior to the meeting occurring prior to December 31st of 2026. Right? So this wouldn't affect this election. And at least 90 days before the annual meeting occurring after January 1st. So in other words, in 2027, we would change that from 75 days to 90 days. We don't want to do it, obviously, to affect this year. So that's one that we saw. Another one, this kind of talks about what we were talking about with large loads. So we do have a section 8.03 that talks about economic development rates. You're not going to be offering an economic development rate for large loads. So those are kind of excluded from this. So we are going to offer some language up that talks about there are things that do special agreements, special contracts that are these mega loads or any large load that we're just not going to be able to offer economic development rates for, right? Economic development rates are really for things that are under 50 megawatts, predefined by Hoosier. So that's, again, another one that we saw that is going to need some attention as we get into the world of, whether you get a mega load or not. It's just something we need to think about. Those are the two that I saw.
Well, and I know the one that I'm particularly interested in is the potential for removing a director by petition where they have to get so many signatures. But in my mind, somehow there needs to be a date associated with those signatures. As it stands right now, once someone has signed that petition, the bylaw implies that that's valid forever. So to me, there needs to be a signature and a date if someone's going to sign that petition, and that date, there's a expiration period associated with that signature. So those types of things. If we have processes whereby we have vacancies on the board, we need to have consistent methodology, consistent processes whereby those vacancies are filled. And right now we have some inconsistencies. So those are the types of things we're talking about.
So I'll take those two, and then the ones that I brought up, I'll have legal draft up some red lines. As you guys see any other ones that you want us to draft red lines, let me know. It sounds like there's two. You brought up two. I have the economic development in the 90 days. I'll get those drafted up in red lines, and we'll bring those next month.
And again, that'd be effective after this year's election, correct?
Anything that has to do with anything in an election standpoint, that, yeah, we would not want to do that. We can write it up to where it takes effect January 1st.
Go ahead and process it.
Yeah.
What I have is what we're gonna come up on is nominating committee candidates. Like the way we have written it up on redistricted, it should be just me and Dale would be having nominating committee candidates this year. And that way we have it now is Steve, Carl, myself, and Suzanne.
I think until you get into,
Which I guess, yeah.
there was some
We have
years.
some kind of schedule where we're actually gonna get it, like mine is correct now, but Carl's was correct. Now he's gotten bumped up.
So should the nominating committee be the year before?
That's the way we wrote it
The way
up.
we wanted it to be.
Yeah, so it should
Be
be,
you and I,
Yes.
because see, I know I had unique circumstances because the nominating committee member I had moved and had to resign and then.
That's what this one is. So one of
fill
them,
in, yeah.
one of them is-
Fill-ins.
Suzanne didn't get one the last time, so that one we kept vacant. So that's why that one's on there. There was another one on there that had to do with moving.
But their new terms would
Would be a shorter
shorter
term.
term instead of 3 years, so go back to the original schedule you proposed.
Eventually, once we get through this, that time period, that whatever it was going to take, the idea is that it would be on that schedule.
Change dropping from 8 to 7 directly. Right.
Yeah, because I think for like me, if you're getting one now would it be a 3-year term?
Yeah.
See, I will get it. I'll have to get one next year when we're up for
For a 2-year
reelection.
term.
And mine's going to be for 2-year term.
Yes. It's going to take.
So we're still on schedule, but it's just getting things sorted out now. Okay.
And actually, what's odd too, in the way we wrote it in the bylaws is, so the current nominating committees, there's two nominating committee members today that have switched. They're in a different district. And so the way we wrote it up is whatever you were elected in is the district that you're finding. So in other words, let's just say someone's in District 1 as a nominating committee right now, and they have to go find a director for them. They may be in District 2 now because of the way we rewrote. But until we get the schedule line, they are whatever you were elected as is what you're finding. So it's confusing as
Yeah.
all get out. I get it.
And there's probably another 3 years before everything.
It's probably more than that. We had that all scheduled out and I can't remember exactly.
But it's all written down.
Yeah.
I mean, it's.
So anyway, give some thought to it, review them if you have anything. And please be prepared to bring it next month's meeting.
If you could let me know if you guys have any, I could go ahead rather than drawing up on it from a legal standpoint. I think I've got those.
Okay, next item, governance policy review. As I said just a few minutes ago, we're the visionaries. Brett and management team are the operational ones. What we always want us to operate in and them to operate in is an environment where the lines are clearly drawn, understandable, and they're not gray area. To that end, Brett has come up with the memo that you see on your iPad. So I'll turn that over to Brett.
So what we did is I reviewed the existing policies that would improve clarity, ensure consistency, and establish a clear framework that aligns the differences between the roles and responsibility of the board member, the roles and responsibilities of management. As we started reviewing these, of course, we looked at 1.3, 1.6, 1.4, which once you start peeling that open, it also involved 1.10 and 1.16. The whole idea of this is not to reduce board authority, not to limit transparency, not to change CEO accountability. It's really there's a lot of ambiguous stuff in there. There's a lot of contradictory stuff in there, and it's just cleaning that all up. So I actually used ChatGPT over the last probably 6 months to really shore up. And so what I did here is by policy, I put the high level changes that we recommend. I didn't include the red lines because it's intense. It is some major rewrites of some of these policies to get them all aligned in a framework that clearly identifies the different roles and responsibilities. And again, this doesn't reduce board authority. It doesn't change the CEO accountability or transparency. So what I'm asking for is, based upon the memo that I sent you, is it hasn't been reviewed by legal. So I've reviewed these, we've made red lines, and I'd like to go ahead and give those over to legal at this point and let them make changes. And then we can kind of go through those in the next 6 months, 8 months, however long it takes to try to get those a little bit more crystal clear. As an example, there's one that talks about services of contractors. So who between board and management hires contractors, how's the reporting structure work? You read that policy, it is very, very, we've talked about this for years, right? It's very unclear on the reporting structure. Really what is as simple is you guys as the board can go contract anybody you want. If it's board related, they report to you, right? And you keep me in the know-how. If it's somebody that operationally I'm going to go consult with, then they report through me, and then you guys as oversight would have oversight of that. It's things like that that are just not clear in some of these policies. And then you got another policy that really can contradict it. So it's trying to make the responsibilities very, very clear and give a framework around those roles and responsibilities. That's kind of what this is all about. But when I started looking at it and started redlining these things, it's a major overhaul. Like there's these 1, 2, basically 6 policies. You know, maybe we just bite them off in little small chunks, and every month we take a look at one and how it relates to the others. But it is something I highly recommend we do. The next step is really to hand this over to legal and let them kind of go through and amend whatever red lines from my red lines, if that makes sense. And these are ones that are on rotation for up to review. That's kind of what started this is we do have a system in place where we review certain policies. The latest they go is every 2 years. But some of them like red flags and stuff like that, we have to do every year. So these are up on rotation. So it is something that we need to review anyway. So my suggestion is let's go ahead and get these right and get them a little bit more crisp and clear. Some of these haven't been wrote. I mean, they were the original government documents that NRECA gave, and some of the wording is just old and very contradicting.
But don't you feel the director conduct policy should be a cooperative effort of the directors making that decision?
Absolutely. These are all.
I mean, I'm just saying, because accessing limited, I mean, we are transparent, we videotape, et cetera, but limiting us to access and putting that in writing out there doesn't sound like it's transparency if you're going to limit us to what information we're allowed to have.
Yeah, I think if you see these all have the magical asterisk, you are the board, right? And so
Yeah.
all oversight, if you think that it's possible for me to put a policy together that says black and white, here's what you do as a board and here's what I do as the CEO, that's impossible.
But just suggesting on that part, we just don't want anyone to think that
Yeah, no, I agree.
anyone's trying to limit. If we want to come in and want X, Y, Z, and you say no, there's a reason why you're saying no. And for
Yeah, it won't, again, all these that we wrote, that it is not to limit your authority. It's not to limit accountability on me. It's really to get this stuff a little bit more in line with each other, and a little bit more less gray.
was it a policy or was it just a recommendation when we requested a report? We had to go email the board on everything. Remember there for a while, like anything we requested, it was there for a short term.
That was not really.
I mean, I emailed Jeannie from my District 1 list to find out, things like that, but wasn't that a little thing for a while? Was that a policy or was that just a suggestion from,
It was a suggestion.
okay, we don't have a policy on
There's
that.
not a policy that says.
Okay.
I mean, it's good practice and you're going to see it. It is in the policy that says if you request information that's pertinent to board activity, you should let the entire board know. I would argue, Suzanne, on the example you just gave, getting a list of your constituents is not going to limit the other board members from doing their duties.
I just remembered one time we had to email the board, copy the board member that if we requested anything from internal.
That
I
was,
couldn't remember that was a policy or we just was a request.
that was a problem with a director asking for specific information and the rest of the board not getting that information. And again, if you're requesting something that's pertinent to the board making decisions, the rest of the, and that's part of my job too, right? Is to make sure that if Suzanne's asking me for what transfer costs are and it's pertinent to a conversation we're going to have at the next board meeting, it's my job to make sure the rest of the board has that information.
And this is a perfect example of that in action.
Yeah, absolutely.
I ask you for this.
You got it. And if it's pertinent to your job as
Can
a,
you email that to us? Can we send that to people asking? Is that public? That's all, like, there's nothing on there.
we wrote it as it's a strategy that we're using. So
But I do think at the time though, there was also, the chairman was deciding if that information was,
Jermaine,
Jermaine, that's the word.
yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
That word was used
The
several
chairman
times.
was kind of the gatekeeper there for.
so what you'll find is in my red lines, it's the board's decision. That's kind of how
That's
it's,
probably the same. I mean, that's not changed then.
well, it's not one person's decision, it's the board. The board is a united function. Yeah, the chairman has some additional responsibilities, but in general, if the board thinks it's, I hate the word germane, but if the board thinks it's information that you need to do your jobs, then that's the board makes that decision, not me. If you all say you need X, Y, Z, and the board all agrees that the board needs X, Y, Z, that's not for me to say no.
But I think as, pertain to this policy discussion, if there are contradictory statements made and there are things that need to be cleaned up, I could see that. But just to say that whatever red lines come from legal, I would support. I can't do that. I mean, I don't think you're asking for that.
No.
But if there are things that could be cleaned up, sure, we could take a look at it, but aside from that, I'm not gonna, without looking at it myself, I don't.
Well, and to that point, isn't that exactly why you go through the red line process?
Yeah, these are recommendations.
Doesn't make sense, because you can, to me, once you reduce it to writing, you see it in black and white, you can read it multiple times, multiple settings. Is totally different than having this conversation.
I would never expect all the bring forward. You guys are gonna be like, yeah, let's do that. No, that's not what I'm asking for at all. Red lines are suggestions or recommendations.
You're
Even
just getting up the heads up.
But
Yes.
a lot of times the red lines come from legal.
Yeah.
These red lines are coming from you guys.
But no, they're gonna go to legal and then legal's gonna,
But you're suggesting to legal.
but ultimately, that's why I think that this isn't I'm gonna bring you all these red lines, right? I think this is probably over the next 6 to 8 months. We kind of go through policy at a time and go through all the changes. And a lot of it is just old language that, Steve's always bringing up. I don't know why I said that. I can interpret that. If you can interpret something one way and he can interpret it a different way, that's a freaking problem. Because every member can interpret it different than too. You guys should be able to interpret the exact same thing, the exact same way. So some of this is just, what's that actually mean? Right? Because a lot of this is old language that probably hasn't been changed in 50 years.
But legal likes to keep things vague.
Some of it is vague and some of it, yeah, no, I agree. And it's all of it you're gonna see is the magical asterisk too, where, your job is oversight. It's really hard to say that,
If you guys want to know what the last 5 years every square washer's cost.
we'll get by substation.
That, but.
By vendor.
Huh?
By vendor.
Probably not.
Be careful what you ask.
It's again, it's not to limit that. It's just trying to make it a little bit more black and white. And you may get them and say, yeah, we don't need to do this. It's okay. Honestly, we didn't spend a ton of time on this.
Well, I think the process is good, but to the comment Jason made, if once we see it in black and white, red line, it gives us the ability to say, nah, we don't want to do
These are your
that.
policies.
That falls on us. That's our responsibility. So, any other questions regarding that process?
And the other thing we're kind of doing built on this is the idea is the policy is your guys' guardrails tell us how you want things shaped. So it gives us boundaries and then we write SOPs based upon those. So when they're not clear at the top level, it's really hard to write SOPs that we use to dictate our work every day. That's some of the other unclear parts. I honestly, there's really nothing controversial in any of this. That once you see the red lines, it's really not controversial. It wasn't intended on.
Anything else on that? Everybody good? Okay, move on to governance issues. The aforementioned nominating committee candidates. Brian, Steve, Carl, Susan.
Paul Steve or Chairman Steve?
I got mine last year.
Steve A.
Steve A. Remote.
Yeah,
remote.
I do not have anybody yet. So still working on it. Hopefully we'll have a couple, but I was gonna ask, was there an email blast or something that went to emails that asked for people that may be wanting to consider this? Did that happen,
Yes.
Brad?
Yeah, that and directors.
And did we receive any kind of feedback, response?
No, not that we're aware of today yet. No.
Gotcha. Okay. So I'm still working on it.
I don't even know in the 8 years I've been here, we've ever had, yeah, we have. We've had one or two directors, I guess, contact us and say they wanted to run. I don't know if we've ever had anybody call in and say, I want to do the nominating committee.
Well, in that vein, I know Suzanne did, every time I've done it, I've had tremendous difficulty getting people to do it.
Well, here's my update. I've contacted 18 people in my district. I've
Did
got
you get a
5.
rejection earlier than
Yeah,
that?
I did. I have 5 maybes, 6 no's, and 7 no responses. So I think some of you may know some of the, because they had just a few extra questions. I mean, it's, very, I said what Jeannie sent me, which was very helpful, but I didn't know if I should maybe have them contact somebody else that's currently on the nominating committee to let them know. But I hate to do that without asking that person first, so.
I'm more than willing to talk to folks if you guys want me to. I honestly think I can tell you from someone that worked in Batesville, Indiana for 11 years. And when I moved to this position, like I would always had trouble I wanted to get involved in my community. I had trouble getting involved in my community. This is an excellent opportunity, especially at the nominating committee, to build a network, to get involved in your community. I don't know. I mean, I know maybe some of the pushback on it, but if you give me some names, I would definitely recommend, because I know there's young folks out there that are looking to get involved in their community. And this is a great opportunity to not have to spend a ton of time. It makes a difference to this co-op. And I'd be more than willing to talk to them.
I'm in the same boat as Steve. Understand, Suzanne? Don't have anybody.
So in the event where we don't get candidates,
Second. Now, you do have other, I mean, the one thing that Robert really hit up on good this last nominating committee meeting was they are a board and they'll help each other out. So if there's a vacancy, it's not the end of the world, right? There's other people on the nominating committee that can help. Now, obviously, you'd like to have every district represented, but there's other people that can help on the board.
What's the deadline for the magazine?
I want to say, I'll get that to you. I'm not sure. She sent out an email, but I'm not sure. I know that.
Probably within the week, maybe mid-February.
I will text you that because I don't know. I don't want to give you a date. It's more than
Okay.
It would have to be because the nominating committee doesn't meet again until
until 2 weeks.
February.
Yeah. And I think it was tight on that, but I want to say end of.
Just let me know so I can kind of give a deadline.
anybody else on that? Okay, it's that time of year when we need to identify who's your energy director and voting delegate. Before we take action on that, I do want to acknowledge the fact that Jason has been the delegate since as long as I've been on the board, since as long as I've been a director, and has risen to treasurer, correct? And our executive committee path. So has served well, which obviously I think brings some favorable influence for Decatur County RNC. So would entertain a motion to identify who's your director and voting delegate.
Voting delegate for the annual meeting, or is this the?
Both. All membership meetings, including the annual meeting.
We're looking for a director and a delegate.
Annual meeting is April 6th,
April 8th.
or 8th.
And I guess it does not need to be one and the same, would it be?
No, you can't.
Preferably not, yeah.
You have to sign it.
Okay, well, preferably not, then let's do that. Who's your delegate first, or who's your director first?
Says the 6th on this.
It is the
This
sixth.
email says this says the 8th.
This is the 6th here.
6th of a Monday.
Wednesday, April 8th is what this says.
6th is a Monday.
Probably that Wednesday.
You look on your thing?
Yeah.
I thought we just did the. For sure. It's the sixth.
What was it?
It's on our calendar.
Brad, the calendar. 6th.
He's got the official.
These official resolution.
You said Monday, your invite. So
I'm
Monday,
pretty sure it's the sixth. I don't, it was in your last board packet.
I'm looking at the meeting list here, but I'm.
No, it's not in there. You did a resolution last meeting.
Wednesday, April 8th. Board of Directors meetings.
Yeah, the two is the last one. So
No, that's for next year.
Should.
Oh,
Enough you on there, huh?
you're right. It's
Yeah.
the sixth or eighth. My bad.
What's the 8th?
It is April the 8th, Wednesday, April.
that, excuse me, that's the voting delegate at the annual meeting, correct?
Yep.
It's a Wednesday. Do we want to consider these two in separate motions? Entertain a motion for nomination for the Hoosier Director, Hoosier Energy Director.
I'll nominate Jason Barnhorst.
We have a motion. We have a nomination. Jason, are you willing to accept?
Yes.
Any other nominations? If not, motion to close nominations.
You know, since there's only one, you don't need to. You just
Approve.
do a motion to approve.
Motion to approve Jason as the Hoosier Director. All in favor?
I,
Opposed?
Aye.
You were the opposite, right?
Congratulations, Jason. Thank you. Now we need to act upon a voting delegate for the Hoosier annual meeting. To be held Wednesday, April 8th. Is that at French Lick again this year? So would entertain a nomination for the voting delegates.
nominate Jason.
Can I be the delegate?
I was thinking, no.
I don't think so, Jason. I think we need
I rescind it.
somebody.
You're right. You can't because the delegate is going to
Is anybody else
vote
going?
on the director.
Is
Yeah.
anybody else going?
I plan to.
You need to check your schedule, right?
It's on my calendar.
I'll nominate Dale.
Oh, there you go.
We have a nomination. Any other nominations?
Do you accept?
Yeah, that's fine. Why don't you? If not, I'll make two. Any other nominations? None? All in favor?
Aye.
Yes, I'll be there. Okay, got everything we need there, right? Director Training Conference report out. Anybody attend anything since last month meeting? Nothing, Steve? You didn't have anything, did you?
No, did not attend anything last month.
Okay. Next agenda item, affiliated organizations. Brian, nothing from Brian. Jason, Hoosier.
Pretty brief meeting, no action items were taken, but these were the notes I made. Pat Manigan was there from NRECA, the leader of the training, and did an abbreviated presentation concerning large loads and data centers. So, we had a lot of discussion in that session, and Donna alluded earlier, policies around mega loads, subsidization, and the protection against future stranded costs. That was one thing that wasn't mentioned tonight, but that's something that we're also working on. The other thing was that Hoosier's not going to use call to order anymore. So we're going to have to do something different. Brett's aware of that, and Sam, they're working on something to replace that. And we need a mega load policy at DCRMC. So, and we're calling that a customer driven, what does the R stand for, Brett? Customer driven rate or resource? Is it resource? It's a CDR. That's the new, we don't have a market-based rate necessarily anymore. It's all going to customer driven because that's essentially what it is. And then that process, what Don was talking about, when people come and submit proposals or, now there's even an application fee. Like too many tire kickers, wasting too many resources and people's times, and that may be even something that happens here. I don't know. Anyway, that was it. No action.
Steve, anything from IEC?
No meeting this last month. There's a meeting scheduled in February, so hopefully I'll have something to report back then.
Okay. Well, that being the case, brings the general session to conclusion of the agenda. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. We will go into executive session.
So moved.
Second. Second. All right, Jason and Steve. Okay. We're out in general session. Take a couple of-
I'd like
Everybody-
to stay on. Do I need to call back in or?
No. I just stopped the